3 minutes ago, the photographs went out, and within moments, a quiet family holiday became the spark for the ugliest question this family has faced in years. Because the pictures showed something almost sacred. Prince Harry, his two small children, standing on the grounds of the one place in England that belongs body and soul to the memory of Princess Diana, the house where she grew up, the estate where she is laid to rest. And to some people, those images were beautiful, a father bringing his mother's grandchildren home to where she began. But to others, and perhaps to one man above all, they were something else entirely. A wound, a provocation, a line that never ever should have been crossed. Because there is one person who has spent his whole life guarding his mother's memory in silence. Who has never turned her into a headline, never made her a hashtag, never let the world in on his grief. Prince William. And the question tonight, the question setting the internet on fire, is a simple, brutal one. When William saw those photographs, what did he feel? Was it pride, or was it fury? Was this his brother honoring their mother, or exploiting her? Sharing her memory with her grandchildren, or putting the most private grief the two of them ever shared on public display for the whole world to consume, because these two brothers have fought over their mother before, over how to remember her, over who gets to speak for her, and every single time it has ended in more distance, more silence, more pain. So what happens now, when one brother takes their mother's memory and shows it to the world, and the other is left watching from the outside, with no say at all? Long you to hold on to that question, because tonight we are going to walk through all of it. What the photographs actually showed, why that particular house means what it means, the years of war between two grieving sons, and why so many people believe that with this one holiday, Harry may have crossed a line with his brother that cannot be uncrossed. My name is Edmund Hale, and by the end you are going to have to decide something for yourself. Did Harry honor his mother, or betray her? Let me tell you what actually happened, because this part is real. This week Meghan shared photographs from the family's summer holiday, and among them were images that stopped royal watchers in their tracks. Harry with his children, Prince Archie, 7 years old, and Princess Lilibet, 5, spending time at Althorp. Now, if that name means nothing to you, let me explain why it means everything here. Althorp is the ancestral home of the Spencer family, Diana's family, for more than 500 years. It is the house where Diana spent much of her childhood. It is where she ran as a little girl, long before the world ever knew her name. And it is where she was laid to rest, on a quiet island in the middle of a lake, after the whole world watched her funeral in tears. This is not just a pretty English estate. This is, for the Spencer family and for millions who love Diana, hallowed ground. It is the closest thing there is to a home for her memory. And this week, Harry brought her grandchildren there. Children who never got to meet her. Children who will only ever know her through stories and photographs and places like this one, standing in the gardens where their grandmother once played. Let me make you feel the weight of that place for a moment, because Althorp is not a house you visit lightly. When Diana died in that terrible summer nearly 30 years ago, the world watched her coffin travel from London out into the English countryside, here to the Spencer estate, to be buried on a small tree-lined island in the middle of an ornamental lake, away from the crowds, away from the cameras, a place chosen precisely so that she could finally rest somewhere the world could not reach her. For decades, that island has been kept private. Her sons could visit in peace. Her family could grieve without a lens pointed at them. It became, in a sense, the one corner of the earth where Diana belonged only to the people who truly loved her, and not to the public that adored her from a distance. That is the ground we are talking about. That is the home Harry brought his children to this week. So you can begin to understand why an image from that place is not like an image from any other holiday. It carries 30 years of grief in it. It touches the most sensitive nerve this family has. Told that way, it is a tender story. A son making sure his mother is not forgotten by the children she never got to hold. And there are many, many people who saw those images and felt nothing but warmth. A father standing where his mother once stood, passing her on to the next generation. What could possibly be wrong with that? But here is where the storm began, because those photographs were not kept private. They were shared, released to the world for millions to see and comment on and argue over, and that single decision transformed a private family moment into something very public and very charged. And there was one person, once again, who was nowhere in those pictures. One person whose absence speaks as loudly as anything in them. The other son, the other grandchild of Diana, the brother who was not there, was not asked, and according to the whispers now spreading across every royal circle in Britain, was not happy about any of it. So let me ask the question that is now dividing the entire country. Why would this of all things drive a wedge between two brothers? To understand it, you have to understand what Diana's memory has become inside this family. Because for William and Harry, their mother is not just a memory, she is the deepest wound they share, and at the same time the thing they have fought over most bitterly. Think back. These two brothers walked behind their mother's coffin as boys in front of a watching world in what William himself later called one of the hardest things he was ever asked to do. They carried that grief together, and for years they honored her together. The memorial garden, the concerts, the statue they unveiled side by side. But somewhere along the way, they came to see her memory in completely different ways. One brother believes some things should stay private, that grief is sacred, that you protect your mother by keeping her out of the spotlight, not by putting her in it. The other came to believe that speaking openly, sharing the pain, refusing to stay silent was its own kind of honor. And that difference, that quiet, fundamental disagreement about how you love someone who is gone, has become one of the deepest fault lines between them. Look at the history and you can see it playing out again and again. Think of the day they stood together to unveil a statue of their mother in the gardens where she once walked, one of the last times the world saw them side by side, and even then, the warmth between them looked strained, careful, like two men holding a truce for her sake and no longer for their own. Think of the fierce public way William defended his mother when it emerged how she had been deceived into giving her most famous interview, the cold fury of a son protecting his mother's memory from those who would exploit it. That is who William is when it comes to Diana, fiercely, silently protective. And then think of the other path, the interviews watched by tens of millions, the memoir that revisited their mother's death in painful, intimate detail, her final hours, the tunnel in Paris, the grief the two boys carried. To Harry, telling that story was a way of honoring her, of refusing to let her be forgotten or sanitized. But to a brother who believes some grief should never be spoken aloud, each of those moments may have felt like a fresh wound, their mother's memory handed, once again, to a watching world. So this is not new. The two of them have been quietly at war over how to remember their mother for years. What happened this week did not start that war. It simply reopened it in the most sensitive place imaginable. So now put this week's photographs into that context. One brother takes their mother's most private sanctuary, the home where she grew up, the ground where she rests, and shares it with the world. And to him, perhaps, that is beautiful. A gift to his children, a way of keeping her alive. But to the other brother, to a man who believes that some things are too sacred for the internet, it could look like the exact opposite. It could look like the one place that should have stayed private, being opened up for public consumption. It could feel less like honoring their mother, and more like using her. I am not telling you that is what happened. I am telling you that is how it could land, and why so many people believe William would see this, not as a tribute, but as a betrayal of everything he thinks his mother's memory should be. And then there is the other layer, the one that has nothing to do with grief and everything to do with the war between two households. Because Althorp is Spencer ground, it is Diana's family, not the Windsors. And by taking his children there, by drawing them close to the Spencer side, Harry was making a quiet statement about where his family belongs now. Not with the palace, not with his brother, but with his mother's blood, on his mother's land. Was that the message he meant to send? Or are we all reading far too much into a simple family holiday? That is the question. But you can see, can't you, how to a brother already estranged, already hurt, this could feel like a door being closed and a line being drawn. And consider what it means for those two children, caught in the middle of all of this without the slightest idea. Archie and Lilibet are not just Harry's children. They are Diana's grandchildren as much as George, Charlotte, and Louis are. They carry her blood, and yet they are growing up an ocean away, largely outside the family she was born into, closer now to the Spencer side than to the Windsor side of their own history. So when Harry brings them to Althorp, he is not only visiting a house, he is quietly deciding which half of their heritage they will grow up knowing, the Spencers, who welcomed them in, not the palace, that did not. And that is a decision with weight, because one day those children will be old enough to understand the story of the family they were born into, the titles they hold, the grandmother they share with the future king's children, the uncle they may barely know. What will they have been taught to feel? Where will they have been taught they belong? A single holiday does not answer that, but the direction it points in is unmistakable, and for a brother watching from the other side, it may be the most painful part of all, because it is not just about the past, it is about which family these children will call their own in the future. And that brings us to why the timing cuts so deep, because this did not happen in a vacuum. It comes after years of interviews, of books, of accusations that landed on William and his family like blows. It comes at a moment when the rift between these two brothers is already about as wide as it has ever been. So when the photographs appeared, they did not land on a clean slate. They landed on years of hurt, on a relationship already hanging by a thread, and for a brother who feels he has watched their mother's memory used again and again, this may have been the moment something inside him finally broke. Let me do something now, and I want to be completely clear about what it is. What I am about to describe did not happen in front of any camera. No one has confirmed it. It is imagined, a way of feeling our way into a human moment we can only guess at. So please take it as exactly that, and nothing more. Imagine William seeing those photographs the way the rest of us did. Not from a phone call from his brother, not from a quiet word, but from a post shared with the world of his brother's children standing on the ground where their mother is buried. Imagine what that does to a man who guards his grief so tightly he will barely speak her name in public. Imagine the mix of it, the ache of seeing his mother's home, the sting of not being part of it, and beneath it all, the old familiar anger of feeling that the most private thing they ever shared has been opened up once again. Imagine him setting the phone down, saying nothing, because that is what he does, and carrying it silently the way he has carried all of it for almost 30 years. Long ago if it happened anything like that. I truly don't. But behind the tabloid words, war, betrayal, erupts, there are two real men who lost their mother when they were far too young, and who have never ever found their way back to grieving her together. So let me be honest with you, both sides, because you deserve the fair version and not just the dramatic one. On one side, the gentle reading. A loving father, making sure his children know their grandmother, taking them to the place she loved, connecting them to her family, keeping her memory alive for a generation that never met her. Under this reading, Harry did something beautiful, and the outrage is manufactured, and William, wherever he is, understands.
And on the other side, the darker reading.
A private sanctuary turned into public content, a pointed step toward the Spencer side, and away from the Windsor. One more moment where the memory of Diana becomes a statement, a headline, a move in a long and bitter feud. Under this reading, a line was crossed, and a brother who has taken all he can take may never forgive it. Here is what I will not do. I will not tell you that William is raging, or that Harry meant harm, or that anyone has betrayed anyone, because I do not know that, and neither does anyone writing these headlines. To claim it as fact would be a lie, and unfair to two grieving men. But I will not pretend the question isn't real, because it is. And it cuts to the heart of the saddest truth about these two brothers, that even now, even after everything, they cannot seem to love their mother the same way. And this is where I want to bring you in, because this is a story with no official verdict, only the one you reach yourself. So let me ask you directly, do you stand with William? If you believe that some things should stay sacred, that a mother's memory and the ground where she rests should never be turned into public content, and if you believe William is right to be hurt by this, then do one thing for me, subscribe to this channel. Let that be your vote. Let it be how you say, out loud, that you are on William's side, the side that believes Diana's memory deserves to be protected, not put on display. That is all I will ask of you tonight. Just that one thing. Because your voice quietly clicking that button is how stories like this one get told. Now let me step back, because I think this is about something bigger than one holiday and one set of photographs. It is about grief, and about the fact that there is no right way to carry it. William protects his mother by keeping her close and private. Harry honors her by sharing her, speaking of her, bringing his children to her world. And the tragedy is that both of them in their own way are trying to do the same thing, to love a mother they lost far too soon. They are just doing it in ways the other cannot forgive. We turn one of them into the villain and the other into the hero depending on which side we have chosen. But the truth is quieter and sadder than that. These are two boys who walked behind a coffin, who never got to say goodbye properly, who have spent their whole adult lives being watched as they try to grieve. Neither of them asked for that. And neither of them, I suspect, is the monster the internet needs them to be. And here is the cruelest irony of it all. The one person who could have stopped this, who could have pulled these two boys back together with a single word, is the very person they are fighting over, Diana. If she were here, there would be no feud about her memory, because she would be making the memories herself. She would be the grandmother taking Archie and Lilibet through those gardens. She would be the one holding her sons together, as she always did. The whole tragedy of this story is that they are at war over an absence, over the shape of a hole she left behind. Think about what these two men have actually lost. Not just a mother, but the one person who understood them both, The one who could translate one brother to the other, the peacemaker, the softener, the heart of that little family of three that used to escape the palace and just be normal for a while. When she died, they did not only lose her, they lost the thing that held the two of them together. And everything that has happened since, every argument, every interview, every silence, is in a way the sound of two brothers trying to survive without her, and failing to agree on how. That is the real story underneath the headlines, not a war, a wound, one that has never healed, in two brothers who lost the one person who might have kept them together. And whatever you feel about either of them, that is a genuinely human, genuinely painful place to be. So even as we ask the hard questions tonight, let us not forget the boys at the center of them. So where does this leave us? And what happens next? Watch for whether William says anything at all. He almost certainly won't, and that silence will be its own answer. Watch whether more photographs appear, or whether this was a single moment that quietly fades. Watch whether the Spencer side Diana's family draws Harry and his children closer still, and what that means for a boy who is, whether he likes it or not, still second in line behind his brother's children. And watch above all whether these two brothers ever find their way back to each other. Because that a single photograph of William and Harry together at peace is the one image the whole world is still waiting for. And after this week, it feels further away than ever. Because here is the truth about grief in a family like this one. It does not stay buried. It comes back again and again in photographs and anniversaries and quiet English estates, and it asks the same question every time. How do you honor someone you lost? And what do you do when the person who lost her too cannot agree with you on the answer? Let me leave you where we began, with a photograph. Two small children on the ground where their grandmother rests. A father who says he is keeping her memory alive. And a brother somewhere who may believe that memory has just been used against him. Maybe it was love. Maybe it was a gift to two children who will never meet her. Or maybe in one holiday, one brother crossed a line with the other that cannot be uncrossed over the only thing the two of them ever truly shared. I have told you honestly that I do not know which it is, but I have shown you everything I see, and now the verdict belongs to you. My name is Edmund Hale. Thank you for sitting with me tonight, through a story that in the end is not really about a feud at all, but about two brothers, one mother, and a grief that still does not know how to heal. Until next time,